All right, guys, Mr. Antonucci here. And in the second video, we're going to talk about how to calculate confidence interval for a difference between two population means. So once we know the conditions are met, then we can calculate this confidence interval. And we use the same formula that we've been using where you have your point estimate plus or minus the margin of error. Or you can think of it as your statistic plus or minus the critical value times the standard error of the statistic. So in this situation, when you have two independent random samples or two groups, we have two types of independence. One is where you have independent random samples, so you make sure you check that and specify it when you're checking the condition. Or the other situation is when you're sampling without replacement and you have independent observations within each sample. So when you calculate a confidence interval for a difference between two population means, here is the formula in its entirety for constructing a confidence interval. You have the difference between the two sample means plus or minus the t star critical value times the standard error of the statistic. Now, this full formula here is not going to be in the formula sheet for the AP Stats exam. However, the formula for the standard error of a difference between two population means is going to be in there. And the general formula statistic plus or minus critical value times standard error of the statistic, as well as the t distribution or the t table. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're first going to look at an example here. We're going to look at how to do this on the TI-83 or 84 calculator, and we're going to construct a confidence interval just real quick using the information from the previous example in the previous video about the one-bedroom apartments in New York City and Chicago. So I have the data here, and I'm going to show you how to do this on the calculator. So the first thing you want to do is enter the data into the list feature. So hit stat, number one, edit. I already put the two lists in here to save time. So then you press stat and then tests and then to sample t interval, which is choice 0 here. So on this page here, you want to input the data. So if you had the statistics already, you could hit that and then enter them manually. But if you have the data, you want to tell it to use list one and list two, which we already have. Leave the frequencies there. The confidence level was 0.99, if you remember correctly. Choose no for pooled. We're not going to be using that in this class. Okay, so if you hit enter, um, and then scroll down to calculate, hit enter, and it will calculate the confidence interval for us there. And we get negative 77.76 to 951.76. So that it would be our confidence interval there. And we'll talk about how to actually interpret that confidence interval um, right now. So we are 99% confident that the interval from negative $77.76, excuse me, to $951.76 captures the true difference in population mean monthly rent of one-bedroom apartments in New York City and Chicago. So what that suggests is that the mean monthly rent in New York City is between 700 or $77.76 less and $951.76 more than the mean monthly rent of all one-bedroom apartments in Chicago. So notice that the interval does contain 0 as a plausible value. So it is plausible that there is no statistical difference between the mean monthly rents in the two cities. So let's run through a full example here. As the Spanish-speaking population in the United States has grown, businesses have increased their focus on providing Spanish and English options for customer service. One study interviewed a random sample of customers leaving a bank. Customers were asked if they spoke English or Spanish when talking to bank representatives. Each customer rated the importance of several aspects of bank services on a 10-point scale. And here we have the summary statistics for the importance of reliability or the accuracy of account records. So we want to calculate a 95% confidence interval for the difference in population mean reliability ratings of customers who speak English and customers who speak Spanish when talking with this bank's representatives. So to construct a 95% confidence interval for the mean difference between English and Spanish, now it's important that you indicate the direction of the subtraction and then identify the parameters involved here. So mu English is the population mean reliability rating for customers who speak English to this bank's representatives, and mu sub Spanish is same thing but for speaking Spanish. Okay. So if we move on from there to construct our confidence interval, we do the difference of the means. Okay, so 6.73 minus 9.51 plus or minus t star critical value times the standard error. Remember, this is how we calculate it. And notice that 0.6 and 0.93 are the standard deviations of the sample because we don't know the population standard deviation. 92 and 86 are the sample sizes there. So if we use technology like I just showed you, you would get a confidence interval of 0.226 to 0.964 with 143.69 degrees of freedom there. So we want to now we want to determine, does the interval we just found provide convincing evidence of a difference in population mean reliability ratings? So yes, it does, because if you look at this confidence interval, it does not contain zero, which means all the values of the population mean difference are above zero. So this confidence interval does provide convincing evidence of a difference in population mean reliability ratings because zero is not included in the interval of plausible values. Okay, so with this, researchers selected one random sample that included individuals from both populations of interest for those who speak English and those who speak Spanish to this bank's representatives, and then separated the chosen individuals into two groups accordingly. So you have two groups created from one random sample. So inference procedures for estimating or testing claims about difference in population means are still valid here in this situation, provided that the two groups can be viewed as independent samples from their respective populations of interest. All right, guys, that's it for this one. Take care.